They treated her like a disruption. In reality, she was a first-class CEO whose name was on the deal that kept their airline afloat. There was nothing exceptional about the weather that morning in Chicago. The sky was a flat silver, the kind of color that didn't commit to rain or sun. O'Hare International buzzed the way airports always buzz. Not with chaos, but with a tightly wound rhythm. Screens flickered with departure times. Voices called out over the PA system, distant and automated. Luggage wheels whispered across polished tile like static. Camille Rhodes walked through it all with the kind of poise that made people instinctively move out of her way. She wasn't flashy. Her tailored navy pantsuit didn't shout money, but it didn't need to. Her locks were pulled back into a neat bun at the nape of her neck, the kind of tidy that said this isn't an accident. A slim leather portfolio rested against her hip, and her posture held the grace of someone who knew exactly who she was, and had no reason to prove it to anyone. Her shoes barely made a sound. Gate B12 was quieter than most. The first-class boarding group hadn't been called yet, though the pre-board crowd was already forming. Elderly couples, young parents trying to soothe fussy toddlers, a man in athletic gear with earbuds tucked in, bouncing on his heels like he had somewhere better to be. Camille scanned the space with a single, practiced glance. Two gate agents, one standing stiffly behind the podium, headset mic clamped tight to her cheek, the other bent over a monitor with furrowed brows. There was a cluster of passengers near the windows, sipping overpriced lattes and checking Slack messages. She stepped forward. The gate agent looked up. Something shifted. It was tiny, almost imperceptible. A flick of the eyes, a change in posture, the kind of subtle alert you wouldn't notice unless you'd seen it before. Camille had. Too many times to count. She offered a polite smile, the kind that held just enough warmth to neutralize tension, and handed over her boarding pass. The agent didn't scan it. Not right away. She looked down, then up again. Slower this time. Her gaze stuck on Camille's face with a flicker of calculation, as if running an equation she hadn't prepared for. She blinked. "This line is for first class," she said. The words were soft, but something in the delivery cut sideways. No welcome, no clarification, just correction, as if the act of standing in front of the gate was already a misstep. Camille didn't flinch. Her voice was even. "I know." That was it. 3 syllables, perfectly balanced between calm and command. But the moment was already shifting. The agent blinked again, then turned to her colleague behind the podium and muttered something under her breath. The other woman peeked around her shoulder, eyes flicking toward Camille, and then darting away, whisper, nod, glance. Still, the pass remained unscanned. Camille waited. Her hands were steady. Her expression didn't change. The agent turned back. "I'll need to see your ID." There was no confusion in her tone. No apology, just bureaucracy weaponized. Camille tilted her head slightly. "You don't normally ask for ID at the gate when scanning a pass," she said. Not accusatory, not challenging, just factual. The agent hesitated. "It's just a security measure." Of course it was. Camille reached into her blazer and produced her license without fanfare. No sigh, no dramatic pause. She extended it the way one might hand over a receipt, with the quiet understanding that she was doing it for their benefit, not hers. The agent took it like it was radioactive. She looked at the name, then the photo, then back at Camille again, as if waiting for the universe to tell her she was right to be suspicious. She didn't scan it, just set it down awkwardly on the desk and walked away. Camille didn't move. To her left, a security officer appeared, silent, postured like furniture. His presence wasn't loud, but it was meant to be noticed. Not by Camille, but by the people nearby. The families, the businessmen, the crew. Everyone needed to see that someone was watching her. She adjusted the strap on her portfolio. No reaction, no panic, just posture. Camille stepped back from the desk, positioning herself neatly out of the boarding lane, but within view. She didn't speak, didn't demand answers. She just took out her phone and made a single call. "Elise," she said when the call picked up, her voice as clear as morning glass. "I need you to pull the Windrift file. The supplier deal with Hawthorne Air. The final contract. It should be in the energy transport folder." A pause. Yes, I'm at O'Hare. Gate B12. Something's off. Elise didn't need more detail. Camille stayed on the line. She didn't pace or fidget. Her eyes remained fixed ahead. There was no frustration on her face, no trace of emotion. Behind her, murmurs started to rise. A man with a coffee cup leaned over to his seatmate. Did she get flagged or something? Maybe it's a no-fly list thing, the woman guessed, eyes narrowed. Camille heard every word, but they didn't matter. She wasn't here to argue. She wasn't here to be palatable. She was here because her company had signed a contract to supply renewable energy storage systems for Hawthorne Air's entire Western fleet, a multi-year initiative worth $62 million. Her presence on that flight wasn't a favor. It was infrastructure. And yet, a woman with a clipboard and a fragile sense of authority had decided, in the span of a glance, that Camille didn't look like she belonged in the line she'd earned. It wasn't about the seat. It never was. The agent returned, speaking into her headset as she glanced toward Camille, now joined by a second security officer. She still hadn't scanned the boarding pass. Camille ended the call. She tucked her phone away. The pass was still in her hand. She looked at no one. But everyone was starting to look at her, and somewhere far above the concourse, the first email had just landed in the inbox of Hawthorne's Vice President of Operations. A subject line with 3 words: "You need context." Camille Rhodes had always understood that presence was power, not volume, not flash, not even rank. Presence, the ability to walk into a room and make people reconsider what they thought they knew. Not because of a title or an entourage, but because something about the way you carried yourself made them hesitate before speaking. It wasn't something you could buy. It wasn't something you were born into. You built it, layer by layer, scar by scar. Camille built hers on the south side of Chicago. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a kitchen that got too hot in the summer. The walls were thin, and the pipes clanked every time someone ran water. But it was home, and it was full of love. Her mother, Angela Rhodes, worked 12-hour shifts as a trauma nurse at St. John's, often coming home with her scrubs wrinkled and her sneakers soaked through. But no matter how long the shift, Camille always woke up to the smell of toast and the quiet hum of jazz playing from the old radio on the windowsill. Her father, Marcus, ran a one-man HVAC repair business. He was always on call, always climbing in and out of basements, always smelling faintly of Freon and copper dust. But he never missed a science fair, a spelling bee, or a parent-teacher conference. They didn't have much, but they had expectations. Camille wasn't just expected to do well, she was expected to excel, not because success was a trophy, but because it was a form of armor. "You're going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far," her mother said more than once, never in anger, always in truth. "Don't let them decide who you are before you even open your mouth," her father added. "Make them catch up to you." Camille listened, absorbed, filed it all away. By 10, she had perfect grades and a growing fascination with machines. She was the only girl in her middle school robotics club, and the only black kid, period. The teacher called her Camilla for the first 3 weeks until she corrected him with a raised eyebrow and a polite, "Actually, it's Camille." By 15, she was coding renewable energy simulations in her spare time and tutoring other students in physics, including juniors and seniors who didn't love taking instruction from someone 2 years younger than them and a foot shorter. But Camille didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Excellence speaks, and hers never stuttered. That excellence carried her all the way to MIT, full scholarship, class of 2009. Camille didn't walk around campus like she was impressed to be there. She knew what it took to get in, what it took to stay. She knew how quickly a missed assignment, a sideways comment, or a dismissive professor could derail even the sharpest students. She had watched it happen to others, especially those who looked like her. So she sharpened her focus and wore professionalism like a second skin. No loud parties, no broken deadlines, no excuses. At 24, she graduated with a dual degree in mechanical engineering and environmental systems. At 27, she founded Rhodes Innovations in a shared WeWork space with no windows, 2 whiteboards, and a half-functioning espresso machine. Her first investor asked if she was the office manager. Her second called her articulate, like it was a compliment. Her third, the one who eventually backed her, only signed the check after she presented a 92-slide deck with predictive models that forecasted municipal energy needs for the next 15 years. He didn't understand half of it, but he understood profit. Camille turned the seed money into a pilot program. That program became a product. That product became a platform. By the time she was 35, Rhodes Innovations was powering the storage infrastructure for 6 metropolitan transit systems and 2 major universities. Quietly, cleanly, effectively. She turned down interviews, declined panels. Let the work speak louder than any press release. It wasn't humility, it was discipline. Because she understood something the world kept forgetting. Visibility wasn't always a reward. Sometimes it was a spotlight with teeth. And when you were a black woman in a room full of suits and Silicon Valley bravado, the spotlight didn't always shine. Sometimes it scorched. Which is why the pause at gate B12 wasn't shocking. It was familiar. It didn't matter that she had a first-class boarding pass, that she was the keynote speaker at a national clean energy summit, or that her company had just inked a $62 million deal with the very airline delaying her. All that mattered, in the eyes of that gate agent, was that Camille didn't fit the picture. Not of what success looked like. Not of who belonged in seat 2A. So now here she stood, calmly off to the side of the gate, being watched like a misplaced bag. The security officer next to her didn't speak. He just hovered. She was still on the phone with Elise. "Found it," Elise said, her voice low and quick. "Final contract, executed last month, signed by their procurement head and cross-verified by legal." "Good," Camille said, eyes scanning the gate display, not watching the people, but aware of them all. "Keep it handy. We might need it." Elise hesitated. "Do you want me to escalate? I can call in through their corporate hotline." Camille exhaled through her nose. "Not yet." It wasn't time. Not because she was afraid to act, but because she had learned the value of choosing your moment. Let them get uncomfortable. Let them lean into their assumptions. It was always more instructive that way. A couple with matching carry-ons walked past and looked at her like she was lost. A man in a business suit leaned in to whisper something to the gate agent. The agent whispered back. Camille could guess what they were saying. She'd heard the phrases before. She must be mistaken. Maybe she's on standby. Maybe she switched tickets with someone. They were always looking for a story that made more sense to them than the truth. That a black woman in a navy suit with unshakable calm could be the reason the plane was flying in the first place. But she didn't need to explain that. She just waited, not passively, but purposefully, like someone who had built her life knowing the world wouldn't always see her clearly. So she made damn sure that when they finally did, they'd have no choice but to remember. The call reached Olivia Jamison's desk at exactly 8:42 a.m. She was mid-sip on her first coffee of the day, a flat white from the cafe across the street, lukewarm but passable, and skimming the morning's operations report when her office line blinked. Unknown number. She almost let it ring through. But something, maybe the double forwarding tag in the caller ID or the subtle priority flag her assistant used only for emergencies, made her pick it up. "This is Olivia Jamison, Vice President of Operations for Hawthorne Air." There was no pause. The voice on the other end was crisp, measured, and direct. "Ms. Jamison, my name is Elise Talbot. I'm the Executive Director at Rhodes Innovations. I'm calling on behalf of Camille Rhodes." That name, Camille Rhodes, snapped Olivia's posture upright. "She's currently being held at Gate B12 at O'Hare, despite holding a valid first-class ticket. Security has been called. No cause has been given. I suggest you intervene before this becomes more than a delay." Olivia didn't ask for elaboration. She didn't need it. She'd seen Camille Rhodes' name 3 times in the last fiscal quarter. On the supply contract, the Sustainability Initiative Overview, and the Internal Vendor Ranking Report, where Rhodes Innovations sat neatly at the top of the clean energy division. They weren't just any vendor. They were the vendor, the ones Hawthorne was betting its future on. "I'm en route," Olivia said, already standing, her heels clicking across polished tile as she snapped a file folder closed. Do not escalate further. I'll handle it. She didn't stop to grab her blazer. By the time she reached the concourse, her phone was buzzing with texts. Ops team chatter. Ground reports. A single message from legal. Do you know who's at B12? Yes, she knew now. She spotted the delay immediately. The boarding line had stalled. Passengers were lingering, murmuring, their eyes flicking toward a lone figure standing beside the gate desk. Tall, poised, unmoving. Camille. She wasn't pacing or posturing, just there, like a monument someone had forgotten to explain. And that, Olivia thought grimly, was the problem. She shouldn't have to be explained. Camille saw her before she spoke. Olivia approached calmly, avoiding the gate agents and cutting a direct path toward her. She extended a hand, her voice low, professional. Ms. Rhodes, I'm Olivia Jameson, VP of Operations. May I speak with you privately? Camille gave a single nod. Of course. They stepped a few feet away from the desk, the eyes of half the boarding lounge tracking their every move. I want to first extend my apologies, Olivia said, voice even but urgent. What happened here this morning is unacceptable and entirely inconsistent with our expectations for frontline staff. Camille said nothing at first. Her face remained unreadable. Olivia glanced down at her tablet and pulled up the flight manifest. You're assigned to seat 2A, correct? Yes, Camille said, then her voice cutting gently through the air. Interesting. I was told this lane was for first class only. The words were clean, precise, no venom, just scalpel. Olivia felt them land. She didn't flinch, but she absorbed them. The kind of moment you don't deflect, the kind you own. I understand, she said quietly. Behind them, the gate agent who'd issued the ID check, her name tag read Carla M., stood stiffly, headset still clipped to her ear, eyes wide with a dawning awareness that whatever script she had written for Camille Rhodes was now unraveling in front of her. Olivia knew the type. Not malicious, just undertrained, overeager, a little too conditioned to associate professionalism with familiarity, a little too quick to decide who fits where. Camille spoke again, her tone soft but unshakable. I wasn't planning on making this a problem, she said, eyes steady. I was planning on boarding my flight and getting to a summit where I'm scheduled to speak on rethinking systems. Olivia didn't miss the metaphor, didn't dare respond with anything rehearsed. Instead, she tapped her earpiece and called in her backup. Justin Cole, get to B12 now, she said into the mic, and bring a hard copy of the Rhodes contract. Justin Cole had only been with Hawthorne's legal department for 9 months. Young, polished, and Ivy League minted, he moved through the corridors of corporate infrastructure with confidence. But when his phone buzzed and displayed urgent B12, he stopped chewing mid-bite into a breakfast bar. By the time he reached the gate, Camille had already returned to her position off to the side. Still waiting, still calm. Olivia met him with a short, sharp summary under her breath. That's Camille Rhodes. The Camille Rhodes. Justin's face paled slightly. From the Energy Initiative, yes. $62 million supplier contract. Seat 2A. She was delayed. Flagged by staff. No cause. Security was called. Justin blinked, suddenly wishing he'd reviewed the press kit more closely. He approached Camille with a composure that felt thinner than usual. Ms. Rhodes, he said, offering his hand, on behalf of Hawthorne, I'd like to apologize personally for this experience. Camille looked at him, expression neutral. I'm not here for apologies, she said. She reached into her portfolio and withdrew a thin manila folder. No theatrics, just paper and proof. This is a signed copy of our supplier agreement. As of this quarter, my company provides infrastructure for your renewable fuel cell storage across all Western routes. That includes every plane in your new clean energy fleet. She handed the folder to Olivia. When your gate agents stopped me, she continued, they weren't delaying a passenger. They were delaying your brand. Justin didn't speak. Camille didn't wait. I'm not interested in a social media statement or an internal memo, she said. I'm interested in better. Because the next time someone who looks like me gets stopped at your gate for no reason, they may not have a direct line to your VP. Silence. Passengers behind them had stopped pretending not to listen. One woman in leggings had her phone held just low enough to record. A man in a plaid vest whispered, "That's her. That's the Clean Energy CEO from the newsletter." Olivia took the folder like it weighed 50 pounds. "We'll conduct a full internal review," she said carefully. "Training, logs, all of it." Camille nodded once. "Good. Then we can all go about our day." She turned toward the jet bridge. No parting words. No dramatic exit. Just a woman in control of her narrative, stepping back into her seat. The one she had already paid for, already earned, already proven. Behind her, the gate agent slowly lowered her headset, and above them, far beyond the blinking gates and coffee carts, an entirely different kind of turbulence had begun to form. Not in the sky, in the system. Camille Rhodes took her seat in 2A without ceremony. The cabin around her buzzed with quiet motion. Passengers stowed bags, tapped out last-minute texts, adjusted neck pillows. But for a few flight attendants near the galley, everything had shifted. One offered to take her portfolio. Another brought over a bottle of water, unopened, label turned neatly outward. "If there's anything else you need before takeoff, Miss Rhodes," one of them said, voice barely above a whisper, "please don't hesitate." Camille thanked them with a nod, not cold, not dismissive, just efficient. Her eyes remained steady, her shoulders squared, no hint of the storm that had just passed. To most of the cabin, she looked like any high-tier executive boarding a first-class seat, focused, poised, inaccessible. But to a handful of flight staff, she was something else, a presence that had shifted the entire terminal without ever raising her voice. She placed her portfolio down, slipped off her jacket, and leaned back. The plane hadn't even begun to taxi, but the real movement was already happening elsewhere. 2 floors above the gate, behind a locked operations door, Olivia Jameson walked into the internal review suite without breaking stride. She didn't wait for legal to get settled. She didn't ask if anyone had coffee. She opened the folder Camille had handed her and laid it flat on the table. "Timeline," she said sharply. "Now." A compliance manager stood. She was young, visibly anxious, and clearly aware that what they were discussing wasn't just a misstep, it was a fracture. "Gate B12 flagged a boarding irregularity at 8:34 a.m., she began. "Passenger was asked to present ID despite already holding a verified first-class boarding pass. Boarding pass matched manifest. No duplicate. No known issues." "Security called?" Olivia asked. "Yes." Gate agent initiated a soft alert. 2 officers were dispatched. There was no incident logged by security, no cause given, no formal entry in the passenger interaction report. "In other words," Olivia said flatly, "there was nothing. Just a decision to stall someone who fit the wrong profile." The room fell quiet. Legal shifted uncomfortably. Another compliance officer chimed in. This could have been anyone, and it would still be bad. But it wasn't just anyone, it was her. Everyone knew who her was now. Camille Rhodes, CEO, supplier, visionary, quiet architect of Hawthorne's entire Green Fleet strategy, the centerpiece of the Future Ready initiative launching next quarter. Her company wasn't just powering their planes, it was powering their brand identity, and she had been delayed, sidelined, like a question mark someone didn't know how to file. "Public relations?" Olivia asked. "We're drafting statements," someone said. "Quiet contingency plan, just in case." "We're not issuing anything," Olivia said. "Not unless it goes public. If we're lucky, this stays internal." Someone else cleared their throat. "But if it doesn't," Olivia tapped the folder on the table, "then we'll deserve what comes next." Back on the tarmac, the plane was still parked. The delay hadn't been announced. Not formally. The digital gate screens continued to flash. Boarding, even though the doors were now sealed. A few passengers fidgeted in their seats, murmuring about crew delays or baggage issues. Camille sat still. She wasn't impatient. She understood delays, real ones. She had spent most of her career solving energy bottlenecks in transportation infrastructure. Delays were data. But this wasn't about aircraft weight or scheduling. This was pause as damage control, a temporary stalling of forward motion so an organization could scramble to find its footing before word got out. Camille knew the choreography well. She'd seen it at board tables, in tech conferences, in partner negotiations. The moment when people realized the mistake hadn't just been what they did, but who they did it to. In Minneapolis, where Hawthorne's corporate headquarters sat glassy and sterile in a business park, Jack Renaud, head of vendor partnerships, was being pulled out of a budget meeting. "Jack," someone said as he stepped into the hallway, "we've got a problem at O'Hare." He froze. The words Camille Rhodes hit him like a brick. "Did she cancel?" he asked, already dreading the answer. "No," the assistant said. "She boarded, but she was delayed, flagged at the gate. We think security was called." "Jesus," Jack muttered. He didn't even ask why. He knew why. The same reason everyone in his position knew why these things happened, even if no one ever said it out loud. It was never policy, it was perception, it was always perception. "Do we know if she's talking to press?" "Not yet. No noise. Not even a tweet." Jack shook his head. That woman could light us up with a single post. He knew that because he'd written the PR memo 2 weeks ago, suggesting that Hawthorne lean into Camille's image, her face, her company, her story, as part of their upcoming rebrand. Silent power, he'd called the theme. Now that silence was holding a mirror up to them, and it was devastating. Back at the terminal, the gate agent, Carla, had been quietly removed. No scene, no public reprimand, just a supervisor with a walkie-talkie and a firm expression. "We need to reassign you for now. Come with me." As Carla walked away, the murmurs around Gate B12 began to shift in tone. Passengers weren't just curious anymore. They were connecting dots. "Something happened," a man in a blazer whispered. They pulled the gate agent. "Who was that woman?" another asked, pointing vaguely toward the sealed jet bridge. "I think she's somebody. I saw one of the flight crew offer her water before she sat down. Like, respectfully." Murmurs became speculation. Speculation became story. And while Camille wasn't telling it, the narrative was already writing itself. Not in headlines, not yet, but in retellings. By the time the plane finally began its taxi, 26 minutes behind schedule, the delay had been logged into internal systems under crew coordination, a phrase that meant nothing and explained even less. But in the secure channels of Hawthorne's management chain, the label was different. CR Hold, Camille Rhodes, the woman who had paused a corporation without raising her voice. As the engines rumbled and the aircraft lifted off the runway, Camille looked out the window. She wasn't angry. She wasn't flustered. But she wasn't indifferent either. Her calm wasn't a performance. It was practice. The kind of calm you develop when you've spent a lifetime walking into rooms that weren't built for you and reshaping them from the inside. The kind of calm that says, "You saw me too late, but now you can't unsee me." She adjusted her seat back, closed her eyes for the first time since entering the terminal, and exhaled. Not with relief, just breathe. Measured, steady, still in control. The plane touched down in Seattle at 1:14 p.m. local time. Camille Rhodes was one of the last to stand. She didn't jostle for overhead bin space. She didn't rush to disembark. She adjusted her blazer, lifted her slim leather portfolio, and waited as the crowd surged forward. Business travelers hunched over duffel bags. A man in a hoodie frantically scrolled through his Uber app. The rhythm of disconnection resumed as soon as the wheels met the tarmac. By the time she stepped into the terminal, the messages had already started to arrive. Elise had texted, "Draft apology letter from Hawthorne's legal just landed in your inbox. They want to acknowledge the misunderstanding." Then another, "You're in a photo someone took at the gate. It's making rounds. You're on Reddit. Silent leadership thread. Nothing viral. But it's moving." Camille didn't respond. Not yet. Her driver met her at baggage claim. A black Lincoln Town car. No logos. Just clean leather seats and a chilled bottle of water waiting in the door compartment. The driver held the door with one hand, nodded respectfully. "Marriott Waterfront, ma'am?" "Yes," she said, her voice smooth from the nap she hadn't taken. As they pulled onto the highway, Seattle's skyline came into view. A gleam of glass and gray steel wrapped in fog. The Western Clean Energy Summit was already in full swing. Panels had begun that morning. Networking lounges were buzzing. And at 3 p.m., Camille Rhodes was set to deliver the keynote address. She hadn't edited it, hadn't added a word about what happened at O'Hare. She didn't need to. Inside the ballroom, the energy was electric. Engineers, policy experts, and executives buzzed around standing tables topped with biodegradable espresso cups and locally sourced pastries. Monitors displayed names, schedules, bios. Camille's headshot hovered between two bullet points. CEO, Rhodes Innovations. Pioneering sustainable energy systems across aviation, education, and urban infrastructure. A few people had seen her by now, whispering in low tones. She's here. That's her. She ignored the glances. The host approached her near the side entrance of the stage, headset buzzing in one ear, laminated agenda in the other. Ms. Rhodes, we're on track. You're up in 6. Thank you, Camille said. No nerves in her tone, just preparation. The lights dimmed. A brief intro played, polite and polished. Our next speaker has changed the way cities, campuses, and now airlines think about energy. Not through force, but through focus. Please welcome Camille Rhodes, CEO of Rhodes Innovations. She walked to the podium without hesitation. Not fast, not slow, just grounded. Her voice when she spoke was clear and deliberate. Not loud, but anchored. Good afternoon, she began, eyes scanning the crowd. I'll be honest. I don't love keynotes. They usually come with pressure to sound profound. I'm more of a blueprint and backup battery kind of person. But I've learned that sometimes we need to pause what we're building to talk about why we're building it. A few nods from the front row. She continued, outlining case studies. Cities that had almost blacked out due to outdated grids, universities that slashed costs and carbon footprints after switching to decentralized storage. But it wasn't until the final 5 minutes that the tone shifted. She paused. Let the silence settle, just long enough to re-engage wandering attention. Most people think failure in clean energy systems comes from overuse, or weather disruptions, or budget shortfalls, she said. But more often than not, failure starts in the places we don't look. The assumptions we make about who's managing the data, who's watching the grid, who gets heard when something's off. The room stilled. She didn't look at her notes. I'm not just talking about systems of wires and fuel cells, she said. I'm talking about people. Because when we shortcut understanding, when we decide too quickly what someone is or isn't capable of, we're not just failing them. We're building fragility into everything we touch. She let the words hang. No mic drop. No dramatic pause. Just truth. Resilience, she said finally, isn't just technical. It's cultural. It's how we treat each other when no one's watching. It's whether we assume the best or expect the worst. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was real, sustained, earned. As Camille stepped off stage, someone near the tech booth muttered, "Damn, that hit harder than I thought it would." A representative from a distribution firm in Portland jogged after her in the hallway. "Ms. Rhodes," he said, slightly out of breath, "that line about shortcuts, I needed that. I've been running my team like a checklist. You made me realize it's people first, tech second." She smiled, the kind that reaches the eyes but doesn't beg for gratitude. "That's where the rot starts," she said quietly, "in the shortcuts." Later that evening, Camille sat alone in her hotel suite. Room service had left a tray she hadn't touched. Her portfolio rested on the desk, still zipped. Her inbox had ballooned. She scrolled past the formal apology draft from Hawthorne's legal team. She didn't click it. She scrolled past an email from a journalist at Fast Company requesting comment. She didn't answer. She paused only when she reached Elise's last message. "They've removed the gate agent from rotation. Internal review started. Quiet, but thorough. No press yet. Do you want to respond?" Camille set the phone down without typing. Her response had already been given. In silence, in stillness, in a story that didn't need a headline to spread. Because stories like hers didn't always go viral. They didn't scream across timelines. They whispered in hallways. They changed training manuals. They reshaped policies. They made someone, somewhere, think twice the next time they looked at a black woman in a business suit and saw anything other than authority. Somewhere in a back office, someone would pull her file and see not just a name, but a lesson. Somewhere in a boardroom, someone would replay her keynote and realize their metrics didn't measure the right things. Somewhere on a runway, another plane would taxi, and maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't take a contract, a confrontation, or a corporate title for someone like her to be seen clearly. Sometimes the loudest thing you can say